I thought Lethal Company was going to be a one-off viral hit to play with my friends like every other party game from the past 10 years, but turns out I was wrong. The game's been out for almost a year now, and it's still getting updated, thousands of people are still playing, and I'm still finding more ways to keep things interesting with each upload. And while the game is currently at the most refreshing it's ever been with version 62, I'm also the most done I've been with the game since my previous hiatus back in June. My current plan is to full send Forsaken Frontiers when it releases on October 21st of this year, so now that I have an actual time frame for when I might drop Lethal Company for good, I thought, what better time to give my formal review of the game than now. So in this video, I'll be going over how Lethal Company exceeded my initial impressions, why I saw Lethal Company as a perfect opportunity to grow as a gaming YouTuber, and what I think of the game now that I have over 400 hours of playtime, have uploaded over 200 long-form Lethal Company videos, and have dedicated over 1,000 hours to editing, streaming, and researching both Lethal Company and YouTube to reach the understandings that I have today. So let's start with how I got into Lethal Company in the first place. Before Lethal Company, I wasn't even playing video games. I actually gave up gaming and various hobbies and habits that no longer served me after some serious bouts of self-reflection. So I spent most of 2023 focusing on my career as a sushi chef while making sure I was physically and mentally disciplined enough to overcome whatever struggles would come my way. I would learn closer to the end of the year that I wasn't passionate enough about food to make a lifelong career out of it, which is why I started focusing less on food and more on educational content over on my other YouTube channel, Remove the Friction. And it was around when I finished editing my first episode for that channel that my roommate at the time asked me if I had heard of Lethal Company, to which I replied no. Not at all. My entire social media feed at the time consisted of food, business, and personal development stuff, so I was completely out of the gaming loop for most of 2023. But my roommate has a history for only asking me about games that I like, and since I hadn't gamed for almost a year and was just about ready to launch a project I worked so hard on, I thought, why not treat myself to a little gaming session as a reward? Turns out that one gaming session would completely change the trajectory of my life, from a physically fit and actively retiring sushi chef who somehow had a decent sleep schedule, to the moderately successful and non-sleeping gaming YouTuber that I am today. When I first loaded up Lethal Company, I knew I had been introduced to a goldmine of both a video game and a content machine. The game's horror extraction gameplay loop of looting scrap from monster-ridden planets was brilliant, the proximity chat feature was amazingly implemented, and the random generations for each landing kept each instance of horror and comedy refreshing, even when presented with familiar enemies and circumstances. I knew from the start that I could stick with this game for a while, because even after experiencing all the scary elements in the short term, I knew that the looting experience would keep me invested in the long term. One of my gripes with most scary games is that the moment that I get stuck on a puzzle or I die in a chase one too many times, I get immediately unimmersed and uninvested in the game and where it's headed. But with Lethal Company, it's not only an expectation to die, but progress in the game is also up to interpretation. And since each encounter is randomly generated, you're faced with the unknown no matter how many times you try and repeat your circumstances. It also helped that I was able to play this game with friends. While it's true that co-op horror tends to be less scary than single-player variants, co-op horror has its place for being funny on one end of the spectrum and hyper-competitive on the other. And somehow, Lethal Company was able to accommodate both. BOFA. My early Lethal Company days were definitely more on the funny side, and as was most people's. The absolute hilarity from the millions of unacquainted people playing this game was the main reason this game went viral the way it did. And it was for that reason that I believed Lethal Company would be a crash and burn type experience like every other game before it. I figured that Lethal Company would get old for people after a month or two, after they've experienced all, or at least enough of what the game had to offer, and I still think I was sensible to hold this opinion, since no other co-op horror game prior to it has stood the test of time in the long run. Other than Dead by Daylight, which is a whole separate thing, but more on that game some other time. But like I said in the intro, we're now almost a year in, and tens of thousands of people are still playing on a daily basis, and I want to attribute Lethal Company's longevity to at least three things: mods, gods, and quality updates. In the early Lethal Company days, one of the main criticisms of the game was that it didn't have enough content. I actually disagree with this sentiment and think that it was appropriately priced at $10. I also think $10 is an absolute steal for where the game is at today, so if you haven't bought the game already, go ahead and do that right now actually. But I understand why people would get tired of the same gameplay loop after about 10 hours of playtime. which is why I thought the game only had a lifespan of a couple months. But once mods started coming out for the game, that changed everything. All of a sudden, there were different outfits, difficulty modifiers, you could add new moons, enemies, and scrap, and there was a new legion of modders who were constantly adding their creations to the Thunderstore library for people to add to their gameplay. Now there are thousands of mods, mod packs, and cosmetics to choose from, and absolutely no reason to believe that there is a lack of new content to experience. I personally experienced the impact that mods had on the game's replay value, since mods like Brutal Company, Bigger Lobby, and Mike's Tweaks kept my own friends gaming for just a bit longer. But mods aren't the only reason why Lethal Company still has a player base. Another reason is the god gamers that are pushing the game to its limits and creating a competitive space for others to do the same. The game of Lethal Company only ends once you fail to meet your profit quota. So for some people, the natural course of action was to find out what that upper limit was. And while the early high quota races were mainly between Bread and Jimmy the Duff, the high quota community recently put together an official high quota leaderboard over on High Quota HQ for people to submit their runs. And as a result, more and more people are sending high quota runs to claim their spot on them. On top of High Quota HQ, there's also a laundry list of speedrunning categories that have been around from the very start. As a YouTube forward Lethal Company guy myself, I wasn't even aware of how big the speedrunning community was until I started looking to Twitch, where I found an entire speedrunning league where the game's most elite players have been competing in various 10 quota formats. And if high quota or speedrunning isn't the thing for you, I've personally created over 100 different and less time-consuming challenges for people to try, such as the Iron Man challenge and the many more featured on my channel. And as much as I wish I could claim solo Lethal Company and Moon exclusive runs as my own, I yoinked those ideas directly from Thelonious, who's basically the pioneer for solo company gameplay. So modded and challenge-based Lethal Company are two community-driven reasons why Lethal Company is still as big as it is today. But the third reason is thanks to Zeekers himself, who continues to push out quality updates to this day. It's crazy to me that despite the thousands of mods that exist, and many more that get added on a daily basis, that Zeekers has continuously found ways to keep the actual updates original and refreshing. And it's just tried and true that when new content gets added to a game, that people will come back to it, and new people will pick it up. No one could have expected the likes of the masked enemies and nutcrackers. Artifice is just one of the best moons in the game, and the company cruiser was such a left field addition that I couldn't help but respect the vision, even if I didn't agree with all of it. I also think Zeekers deserves props for doing this all solo and at such a young age. Last I checked, he's only 21 or 22 years old, and he's currently living the life I personally wanted back then, and what many people aspire to as up-and-coming game developers. And that's a life of creating a game out of passion, with full creative control, and having millions of people play it. He's also written and published a book, which is also on my bucket list, so it's really in line with what I envisioned for myself in my early 20s, but I'll get back to that. Instead, I'm on a path where I'm creating content for this game, and the reason why I want to talk about that is because it not only has a big influence on my own experience with the game, but also because I still think it's possible for people to kickstart a gaming career with this game. When I first started playing Lethal Company, I was hooked to the point where I was watching any and every Lethal Company video, and the biggest thing I noticed from doing this is that most of the videos I was watching were from channels with less than 100 subscribers. And all these people were posting were 30-second clips of unedited gameplay with not much thought given to their titles or thumbnails, and even then they were getting hundreds of thousands of views. And since I was already generating 10 or more clips of my own with every Lethal Company session, I thought, why not throw some of my own in the mix and see what happens? What was interesting about these clips too, is that people weren't uploading them as YouTube shorts, but as actual YouTube videos. This was important to me because of how much that decision impacts the requirements for YouTube partnership. In order to monetize a YouTube channel, you must have at least 1,000 subscribers and one of the following. Either 10 million views on YouTube Shorts in a 90-day period, or 4,000 watch hours on long-form YouTube videos in a 365-day period. So these clips that were getting hundreds of thousands of views were contributing to the 4,000 watch hours instead of the 10 million view benchmark. So I did some math and figured that if a 30-second clip got 100,000 views, then that would earn the channel around 800 of the 4,000 watch hours. So I'd only need 5 clips to perform in that way in a 365-day period in order to reach the watch hour quota for YouTube partnership. And since Lethal Company was still a hot topic and I had a bunch of content ready to upload, I figured that my odds of reaching YouTube partner were actually pretty good. So I started uploading Lethal Company clips, and while most of them only got a couple hundred to 1,000 views, one did get over 50,000 views and net me almost 600 watch hours in one go. But at some point, the content creator in me wanted to actually create content instead of just upload clips. The curated content definitely performed better than the raw clips. But at some point, my friends stopped playing, and I had to figure something else out, since a lot of the clips I was getting back then came from the interactions that I had with my friends. And I had to figure it out, because I still loved the game, and I still saw the potential to reach YouTube partner from playing it, so I didn't want to stop just because I had different goals than the people I was playing with. At the time, I had already been thinking about playing solo, and that was when I came across Thelonious' solo experimentation only video. And I thought it was a brilliant angle, since solo Lethal Company was considered an impossible feat at the time, and no one had even considered landing on the same moon for an entire run before then. So I decided to do the same challenge, despite being nowhere near as good as Thelonious, since I thought it would be an interesting contrast, observing how an average Lethal Company enjoyer like myself would perform compared to one of the best. I also decided to skip straight to Titan after that, since I felt like the bookend moons were the most important, and I wanted to move on to the real challenge I had in mind for a solo Lethal Company experience, the Iron Man challenge. A big thing for my runs with my friends was making sure we landed on a variety of moons throughout our playthrough. We would start on experimentation as a warm-up round, do whatever we wanted in the middle, and end our session on Titan since it seemed like the most appropriate thing to do. The problem was that we eventually got good enough at the game where reaching and even surviving on Titan was no longer an issue, and we started seeing no reason to go to moons like Offense that are unnecessarily dangerous, or Dian where no one even knew how to do the fire exit jump. We also had to start leaving our runs unfinished since we weren't getting fired at the end of them anymore, and we never really wanted to pick up where we left off from an old run. So with all those issues in mind, I came up with the Iron Man challenge, where you go to every moon in order once and only once without dying. That way, we can fulfill the variety quota by going to every moon, we can actually have a complete Lethal Company session in just a few hours, and we could still start and end our runs on experimentation and Titan like old times. I also planned on debuting the Iron Man as a solo challenge, but my friend Nico, who is just as content-pilled as I am, and who now goes by Nico Flow Live, wanted to play with me, and I figured there'd be no harm in introducing the challenge as a duo instead. It was from that point forward that my Lethal Company videos started gaining serious traction, and that was when I learned two important things about YouTube that I wouldn't have learned otherwise. One, that everyone is just one good video away from reaching 4,000 watch hours, and two, that you don't need a big following to get good YouTube money. Now, I'm not here to say that making money from the games you play or videos you make is a requirement or anything, but I do think it's important to have your financial situation in order. And for most people, video games isn't the way to do that. And it was because of this line of thinking, I would think things like, would I have been better off learning some sort of business skill set instead of playing this video game? My answer was always yes, and it's why I've always had this on and off relationship, not just with video games, but every interest of mine. But at the same time, I also understood that taking your hobbies seriously was a legitimate career path. That's why I went to school for game design, it's why I've wanted to publish books of all kinds, and it's why I've entertained ideas of going pro in bowling and poker. Ironically though, it's not why I got into making YouTube content, which I realize now is the main reason why content creation is an ideal career path for me. I've been making YouTube videos for almost 2 decades, and for most of that time, I did it because I thought it was fun, not because I wanted to do it for a living. I started in middle school with Flash games and Try Not to Laugh challenges, got into gaming content for real with my Call of Duty Ninja montages in high school, was introduced to Twitch streaming while running Melee tournaments after college, learned almost all of my current editing know-how during the Fall Guys and Among Us eras of quarantine, and have made all kinds of content everywhere in between. But the main reason why I had a hard time envisioning a career for myself is because I had no idea how to monetize this hobby of mine. Organizing Melee tournaments doesn't make much money, if any at all. I didn't know how to price my video editing service, let alone secure clients for that kind of work. And while I could earn some money through Twitch subs, I actually wasn't too keen on becoming a streamer myself. And honestly, the only reason I'm even streaming on Twitch is because I wanted to show people why you can't just stream on Twitch to grow a following. It just doesn't work. I also wasn't seriously considering YouTube as a monetization option since 10 million views and 4,000 watch hours seemed super out of reach. But I changed my mind when I started uploading Lethal Company clips and realized that I had already almost reached the watch hour threshold before I even started uploading Lethal Company videos. Before Lethal Company, I had already uploaded over 100 different gaming videos, but in that time, I never made it a habit to check my YouTube analytics, since people didn't really watch my videos anyway, and I was mostly doing it to learn how to edit videos and frame content. But since I was uploading these Lethal Company clips with the intention of reaching YouTube partner thresholds, I finally decided to take a look at the numbers, only to realize that I was a lot farther along than I thought. Turns out one of my Dead by Daylight videos from 2021 was getting some views, and I had around 700 hours to start with in 2023 from that one video alone. And since 2023 wasn't when this video performed best, I went farther back into my analytics to see how far along I was on my path to YouTube partnership during the video's peak performance. I saw that when the video was performing at its best, I actually had around 2,000 watch hours contributed toward my partnership eligibility from just that one video. At that point, I knew that YouTube partnership was within my grasp, because all I had to do in a 365-day period was make 1 or 2 videos that performed just as well, if not better, than that one. And since I planned on doing daily uploads, that meant I had 365 tries to get there. And even without the 700 watch hour and 500 subscriber head start that Dead by Daylight video gave me, I still cleared an additional 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours on YouTube in my first month of uploading Lethal Company videos. The question then was whether or not I would make enough money as a YouTube partner to pursue gaming as more than just a hobby. Before reaching YouTube partner myself, I didn't really have an idea of how much money people could make from YouTube if they gave it a real go. I have watched almost 100 different videos and read many threads of YouTubers sharing their returns, but most people were either immediately writing it off after only making a few dollars, or were making an alright amount from weekly, bi-weekly, or even monthly uploads as a side gig. But none of these were too helpful for me because I wanted to do daily uploads, and I was also making gaming content rather than educational content. And while I understood that gaming isn't that valuable of a niche from a marketing standpoint, I also wanted to see what kind of results my desired upload frequency would yield, because the one thing I noticed on every graph was that views and money would go up on days that people uploaded, and they would go down on days that they didn't. So why wouldn't someone who's serious about making a career out of YouTube upload every day? I'd later learn that daily uploads isn't sustainable for everyone and might not even be the best strategy in the long term, but I still found it valuable as a growing content creator because it not only meant that I was getting a lot of content reps in, but I was also starting to build my own data to base my decisions off of. And to some extent, my approach was right, because even with daily uploads, the views and money would still go up every time I uploaded, and in my first month of YouTube partnership, I made $4,000 from ad revenue alone, which was 5 times more than most of the people I watched in the education sector, and 10 to 20 times more than what people made in the gaming sector. And from that point forward, I could no longer view YouTube and content creation as just a hobby, because even at just 1,000 subscribers, I was already earning more money than most of my peers in the culinary industry, and all I was doing was playing a $10 video game and sharing my gameplay online. This was a significant revelation to me, because prior to this, I was under the impression that you needed millions of subscribers and millions of views in order to make a decent amount of money from YouTube. But I was only thinking about the hyper successful YouTubers that are recognizable on a global scale. I wasn't even thinking about the people who were just making a regular amount of money from making YouTube videos. And I couldn't help but think about all my gaming friends, and especially the ones who stream on Twitch and upload clips of themselves on different social media platforms, wondering if they would double down on their gaming hobbies if they knew just how close they actually were from making a significant amount of money from doing so. Turns out 99% of people are either cool with just making gaming content as a hobby, or they're lying to themselves about their own capabilities. But I was happy to find friends in people like Nico, Larry, and Crew Inc. who believed in the vision enough to actually reach YouTube partner themselves. I know I spent the last however many minutes talking strictly about YouTube and content creation in what's supposed to be a review about a video game, but how could I not love a game that not only keeps a roof over my own head, but also puts food on the tables of people I personally know? And it's not like it's a missed opportunity either, because even though Lethal Company isn't as viral as it was back in December and January, I still see new people uploading new Lethal Company videos and getting thousands of views and subscribers from scratch. So on top of being a great game, Lethal Company is also a viable content Kickstarter for people who are serious about the craft. Just don't be lazy and upload gameplay or funny moments type content like I do if your goal is to grow and monetize. Do video essays and guides and opinion pieces like this one, and thank yourself later once you actually get good at it. I'm right there with you. trying to get good at it. That's why this video exists. All that said, I do still think it's best to make my way out of the Lethal Company content space in the long run. It's not going to happen immediately, especially now that I'm finally getting around to collaborating with other creators in the space, but unless Lethal Company shows some serious signs of additional growth, I'll likely have to move on in order to really grow as a content creator. For what it's worth, I do think I could get away with making just Lethal Company content for at least another year and financially support myself from just that, but Lethal Company's total addressable market isn't insane compared to other games I could be playing, and I don't think sticking to Lethal Company will help me improve my skill set as a content creator. I've learned from doing my YouTube homework and uploading some variety content myself that uploading raw gameplay videos from other games just doesn't work. I said earlier that video essays and guides are the way to go, and I even got my own results to prove that, as seen in my Murky Divers guide, which was the first variety piece on my channel that actually outperformed my Lethal Company stuff. So rather than just telling people that video essays and guides and opinion pieces are the way to grow a gaming channel, I'm deciding to put my livelihood where my mouth is and show people once again that the strategies I present work and that people should use them if they're serious about making a living from gaming. I don't think I said it earlier, but I'm here out of spite because I wanted to show people who kind of wrote off my strategies for growing a gaming channel and show them that it actually works. And here we are today. So yeah. So where do I plan to go from here? At first, nowhere, because I'm not done with Lethal Company yet. I actually will spend some time in the next month or so making the video essays, guides, and opinion pieces on Lethal Company that I've kept on the back burner for a long while, since those are still valuable reps and content that people in the community might actually find valuable. But I do plan on adding some variety to my rotation at this time, because even though I'm not done with Lethal Company, I can't say I'm in love with or as passionate about the game as I used to be. Aside from competing for world records, collaborating with other creators, and speedrunning through the ever-expanding encyclopedia of mods on the Thunderstar app, I feel like I've done everything that's worth doing in this game. And while I am enjoying the current update and the prospects presented for future versions, the real deal breaker for me was my time spent in the closed beta for Forsaken Frontiers, which is the new horror extraction game that I'll be playing when it releases on October 21st of this year. So everything I do now will be in practice and preparation for that transition, because there's a lot of work to do if that game is going to see any kind of success. Just like how there hasn't been an asymmetrical horror game to stand the test of time against Dead by Daylight, there has yet to be an extraction horror game to survive on its own against Lethal Company, and I would like for Forsaken Frontiers to be the one that actually breaks through. It's a tall order for a game in a niche genre with a small team and minimal marketing department, but the best part is that all this game is lacking is a marketing component. And I just so happen to be in a market of gamers who would actually enjoy this kind of game. So it's my self-imposed challenge as a content creator to actually use my platform for what it's meant for, to spotlight people and products who deserve the recognition. Lethal Company and everyone involved held that spotlight for almost a year straight, so now it's time to share some of that love. I had such a good time playing the closed beta for Forsaken Frontiers, and I feel like people who are looking for a refreshing take on this new horror extraction genre will also find it in Forsaken Frontiers. That said, I do still think it would be most effective to place this game in the hands of creators like Smitty and Insim, but I'd be in denial to think that my contributions wouldn't make a difference. Pushing this game into the spotlight would be my first real challenge as a content creator since monetizing my channel, and for the first time in a while, I'm looking forward to sharing what I'm about to put down with you all. So if you're a real one for real, go wishlist Forsaken Frontiers on Steam right now if you haven't already. I'll leave a link to it in the video description. Let me know in the comments when you do. Subscribe to the channel if you actually made it this far into the video. And also, just go buy and play Lethal Company if you haven't already. We got time to kill before Forsaken Frontiers comes out. Might as well play this awesome game in the meantime. Especially if you sat through all however many minutes of this video to even hear this plug. But yeah. And lastly, thank you to Zeekers and everyone in the Lethal Company community for making all of this possible. But that's all I have for this video, so I'll see you in the next one. Peace. God damn, that was a long video.